Welcome to Hebrew School from Homeschooling Torah, and this is Lesson 5. My name is Anna Elliott, and today we are going to learn 3 more consonants and another vowel. So we are getting a long ways through the alephbeit now, and there are a lot of words that you can read. Now we have come a long ways through the alephbeit, and we have learned, let's see, about 14 or so letters. Today we are going to start with the letter that has the number 50, and this is the letter Nun. I'm going to draw it like that, and in fact, if I were drawing it on lined paper, we could just start at the top. That wasn't beautiful. And go like that, okay? Nice and skinny, so maybe skinnier than what I have it there. Nice and skinny. And this is the letter that makes an N sound. Now, let me see if I can make that better. An N sound in Hebrew, the Nun, this is the letter Nun, comes from a symbol that means a fish or a seed that is planted. And in the original pictographs, back in the Paleo-Hebrew, so this would be in the time of, say, King David, King Solomon, all the way up into the Babylonian captivity, they would have written things somewhat like this. And you can see that it looks like a little fish swimming, or like the seed that is planted and now it has a little root growing out of it. And over time it has evolved into what we see today. So this is something that is planted or that continues to reproduce and grow, and that's where we get the letter Nun. Now, the letter Nun is one of those letters that has a sophit, or an ending letter. When it comes at the end of a Hebrew word, we shape it and write it a little bit different. And as we talked about in a previous video, that's because all of their words were squished together without spaces in between. And sometimes these letters that commonly occur at the end of a word they had a different form so that your mind could say, yep, that's the end of a word. So if you were drawing this on lined paper, here's a regular Nun, like that. And the one for Nun Sophit, which comes at the end, is going to do just like it, but hang down. And as we've talked about before, with block writing, things that come at the end it's like the bottom falls out. So it would be like that, and it hangs out. Let me show you the block letter for a regular Nun. Is just all inside like that, okay? So you get the idea as to why it hangs down. Now this is confusing because it looks a little bit like a letter we've already learned, which is the letter Vav. And letter Vav is like that. So you can see there is not much difference. Nun Sophit has a tail that goes below the line. A Nun here has the little bottom on it, okay? And then a Vav, which is the hook, remember, comes down and does not have. So the hardest thing sometimes when you're learning new letters of the Hebrew alphabet is to make sure that you don't confuse them, which is one of the reasons why I like to tell you to go into the Hebrew Tanakh and just start circling letters and making the sound as you circle them and identifying them quickly and easily. It's really, really important to do that because your brain has to be able to read fast. And just like in English, when children are learning cursive, sometimes they'll get some letters confused. So some of the ones they might get confused are a G in cursive compared to maybe a P in cursive or a Q in cursive, because they're all so similar. And it's like that in Hebrew alphabet as well. We have a lot of letters that look really similar to each other. All right, so let me teach you another letter, and this would be the number 60 in Hebrew. And so this one is also somewhat confusing. I think it's difficult to write, and it looks like that. And this makes an S sound, and the summit. Sometimes if you were writing in Hebrew cursive, it would be a little bit more rounded than that. And it would look like that. And in fact, in some fonts, it really does start to look like almost an O, which is super interesting. But it's not an O, it's an S. Now, it's helpful to know what the ancient Paleo-Hebrew looks like in this instance, because it helps you understand the sound it makes, as well as why it looks like that. So in ancient times, it would look more like that with go like that, okay? And you can kind of see the shape of it that we have in the modern times. I'm making it by going across the top and then making this little thing. And this S is a picture of, I can think of it as a shield, or also as a thorn, okay? And the thorn, the word for thorn in Hebrew, I think you can think of this kind of sharpness at the top, and then it pokes down right here. And the shield, you can see now, why would a thorn and a shield be the same thing? That's a really good question. And that would be because in ancient times, shepherds, especially when they were out in the fields with their sheep, would want to make a safe place for their sheep to be in the evenings. And so they would take a bunch of briars and they would shape them into sort of a wall or a shield around their sheep to protect them at night. In fact, if you go to Great Britain, you'll see that sometimes they make a wall to protect their animals and enclose them out of briar bushes and so on. So these sharp things make a great shield, especially for the sheep. So this is where we get the pictograph, and that helps me to remember the shape. As far as the letter S, it has a really, really complicated history as to how we get the S sound from this. And in fact, I think as I was doing research for this, the one thing I came to understand is that nobody really knows why it has an S sound and is called a summit, but looks like this. So we will just leave it to the mystery of the ages, and maybe someone wise someday will be able to tell us. But there are a couple tricky things that you're going to need to remember on this one. While I've explained the shape of it, sometimes that's not easy to remember as you're reading. So I think this is a great one that you're going to want to write. You're gonna, if you have trouble, let's say you go to your Hebrew Tanakh and you're trying to find it. It's going to look a little bit more round like this. And I'm going to show on the screen right now a lot of the common fonts that are used in type, in printed type for Hebrew. And I think it can be confusing. This one to me has been confusing. So if I'm writing it, I'm going to make it a little bit more shield-like. And then I'm thinking of myself as a shield or a thorn around. And this is a samach. How to remember that? The best way I can think of is to make your rows of them, okay? Just make rows and rows and rows. And you might want to make some in the block, which is more of this. And you might want to go back and make another one more of the cursive. And I know we haven't talked a lot about cursive, but this is one of those that seems like it would be nice to have in cursive, just because it's the cursive in this case is more similar to the printed one. So I go between those two ways of writing it. Make sure you've got a nice top on it. It's not an O, it is an S, okay? And you need to have it as an S and not an O. So make sure you've got very distinguished tops and that your handwriting is neat and tidy. Okay, the next letter we're going to do is the number 70. And this one is fun. This one is an ayin, and it's going to be like this, kind of like so. So if I were making it here, I'm going to make it's almost like a Y. But here, let me show you a little bit as to what the pictograph means. And by the way, this is a silent letter, so it's not going to make any sound. And it comes from an ancient eyeball. So I'm going to draw it this way and make my eye. Okay, and you can kind of almost like an eye, like this kind of eye, okay? So if you were going to do this, you can kind of see the eye right there, okay? So this is how I write it. It's a little tricky because it's not a Y, and it doesn't make a Y sound. In fact, it doesn't make any sound at all. Do you remember what other letter doesn't make a sound? Of course you do, because you've been doing it for so long now, and that is your aleph, doesn't make a sound. Same with an ayin. An ayin has to have a vowel under it and be its friend, and it takes the sound of the vowel. So let's say we were doing an ah for a patak, or let's say we were going to do a hirik, which would be like this. It would take whatever vowel we put under it. So that brings me to the next vowel that I'm going to teach you. But wait, hold on, before I do, I just want to talk to you really quick about this ayin. The ayin symbolizes, again, an eye or a window. You know how they say that eyes are the window to the soul? And I think that's super cool. But again, it is silent. Our eyes don't speak. They take in information. In fact, sometimes this can be to know or be part of words that have that kind of meaning. And so when we look and behold things through the window, we get a better idea of what is going on in the world, and we are taking in that knowledge. And we're not speaking, we're taking it in. It is silent. Now, a lot of times in Hebrew, you will see these consonants without any vowels under them, especially if you were to go to Israel. They aren't using vowels on their signs. They're just putting consonants. And people who live there are getting used to seeing those all the time, and they know by the context what sound it makes. But this is the sound, our sound that it most commonly makes would be the same as a patach. I'm not saying it always is, but when I see it without a vowel, I just kind of think to myself of an all right? Just like you would say like uh-oh, a lot of times that's a good sound to put for that if you're not sure what vowel to use. So if there is a vowel under it, definitely go with the one that's listed. But if there are no vowels, try and guess it with an and you'll probably be correct. So let's give you another vowel today so that you have a new one. It's been a couple weeks since you had a new vowel, and I'm going to give you one that is so much fun. I like this one. It's 3 little dots, and it's called a segol. And like we found before, segol, the sound, is the sound that this one makes. So all right, and I want to think of a word to help me remember this, a silly word to help me remember what makes the sound, and that is my pet. Now, to me, this looks like a little pet. Okay, I've got whiskers on it, and we've got some eyeballs. All right, this is my little pet, and my pet says So whenever I see this sound, I think of in pet. Okay, so I'm going to show you what the segol would look like under an aleph. All right, it would just look like that. Okay, if it were under a samach, it would look like that. All right, if it were under a noon, it would look like that. All right, so it would be se, ne. So that's pretty easy. Okay, so I'm going to give you some common Hebrew words that we say with the sounds that you've learned or that you've already learned. This is a good review to your. See if you can pronounce these, okay? We're going to go back and review some of the vowels that you've had before. Some of the vowels you had for a, I, now Of course, you also have some that you can make with a yod, zeta yod, and hirek yod. Okay, so let's try some of these. Let's see if you can say this word. Let's sound that out. Levi, Levi, Levi. An interesting thing about this vowel right here, the zeta, you can say it super fast, and sometimes it's going to sound like an S sound, and sometimes that frustrates some of my children. They're hearing how to make all these vowel sounds. You know, you've got ahs and a's and I, and you've got an and you've got another a over here and an e. And sometimes when we think of it as an English-speaking person, we are speaking incredibly slowly. But in Hebrew, it's not like that. They speak very quickly. So this word is Levi. Okay, we have been taught it's Levi, but that's just an English way of saying a Hebrew word. It should be Levi. So try to make it, if you're going to have a more of an authentic sound, Levi. I just kind of make my mouth go like that, Levi. But it's coming out sort of a Levi, but Levi, Levi. Okay, so that's how I do that one. Let's give you another one. All right, let me try this one. We're going to have a samach and a kamatz and a lamed and a hirek. No, I'm going to do a patak, sorry. And then a chait. And see, that was way too congested. See, this is because I'm an English speaker. Chait, very soft. So let's sound it out very slowly. Salach. Salach. Let me do that quickly. Salach. Now we know that this right here, I want to just show you with my thumb. This is an open syllable. and this is a closed syllable. So just reviewing some of the things we've done before. And this one means to forgive. Let's do another one. A word that we might think of as a place. I'm going to do negev. This is a place, but it also means a direction, and I think it'd be more accurate to call it a direction. Negev means south, and the Negev is the south of Israel. So let me write that out for you. This one's using our new vowel that we had today, the sigil, ne. Let's do a gimel, ge, and then let's do a veit, which is like a bait, but it doesn't have a dagesh in the middle of it. So, ne, gev. So we have an open syllable, ne, gev, negev. Okay, let me do one more, and this one is the word for year, which is shana. So we're going to do a sheen. Do you remember this one? Sheen. And we're going to put a kamatz under it, and then a noon, and another kamatz, and then a hey, which is that hey, wow, that nice one that I like so much. So that's shana, shana, and that is the word for year. So again, we have an open syllable and a closed syllable. So that's our word. So those are some simple words that you can learn. Now, I think you could learn some, or you could write some Hebrew words with English. Like you could write English words with Hebrew letters. And here are some that you might want to try. And that would be seed, date, yes, niece, let, net, leave, like I'm going to leave your house, mesh, like a mesh bag, and net. So see if you can write those this week. So just as a review, what are some ways that you can practice the Hebrew that you're learning? I'm going to say it again and say it again, and that is to write a lot. Try to write a line of every letter that you've learned this week. So as a review, here are the 3 letters that you learned this week. You've got a noon. You might need an extra one for the noon sofit. And then you had the samek. And if you want to do an extra one with the cursive samek, that would be fine. And then you had an ayin. Okay? And then you had a new vowel, which was the sigil. So write a line of each of those and then start writing in ways that you can combine them, open syllables and closed syllables. Really, truly, if it's been a little while since you wrote the other letters of the alephbeit, you should go back and write a line of all of the ones you know and all of the vowels. Remind yourself what they're called and what sound they make. Also, be sure to get out your Hebrew Tanakh and find these in Genesis chapter 1. And I guarantee you these are in Genesis chapter 1. Make sure that you go back and also review some of those prefixes that we learned before, such as ha, which says the, or vav, which says and. We had a whole bunch of them in lesson 3. And if you need to, write a line of each of those and then go find them again, just to refresh them in your memory. Don't forget to make flashcards of each of these things and to review those flashcards. Don't forget to sing the alephbeit song. So we can get through the alephbeit song all the way to ayin. So turn that alephbeit song on, sing along, and then try to find the flashcards. Put the flashcards in order and go through and point at each one while you're singing, and then shuffle them up all over the table or floor. And as you're singing the song, see how quickly you can find them in the shuffled up mess. I promise that will very much help. Last but not least, make sure you try to make up some English words or Hebrew words using what you know. Trying to think if there's anything else. I think that would be good. So there's a lot to review. Not very many new things. Always go back and review what you've learned so that it's in your short-term and long-term memory. You want to try to do this every single day. Shalom.